guys, it's Gamer Ahmer here. So Sega has just revealed 10 more games for the Sega Genesis Mini that's due to release on September 19th, 2019. So today we're going to go ahead and talk about those 10 games that have been revealed and recap all the information that you'll need to know for the new Sega Genesis Mini. So let's go ahead and check it out. As it gets closer to September 19th, 2019, Sega has been revealing more and more games for this Sega Genesis Mini, with a couple surprises along the way. So as it gets closer to September, you can already see those pre-orders pop up at Walmart, GameStop, Best Buy, Amazon, and some other retailers. So I'll be picking mine up at GameStop. The game list looks amazing, and we still have 10 games to go. So let's go ahead and talk about those 10 games. So of course, they've already mentioned some Sonic the Hedgehog games for this Sega Genesis Mini, which is a given. Of course, we see Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball, which is a great spin on pinball, and that was such a fun game growing up that it's really neat to see that on this Sega Genesis Mini. And of course, since it's a Sonic the Hedgehog title, they had to include that one on there as it's different than most of the Sonic the Hedgehog games and the gameplay. So that one is definitely a pretty sweet pinball style game, and it definitely adds a lot of fun to the Sega Genesis Mini. And then on to another game we have right here. This is often missed as this is a hidden gem for the Sega Genesis. We have this Beyond Oasis game, and this is such a great action adventure game for the Sega Genesis. And here it says the ultimate adventure awaits. On the mystical island of Oasis, Prince Ally embarks on a crusade against evil. The warrior prince must unleash the powers of the four wild spirits to stop the resurrection of a ruthless sorcerer and save the empire. So this really is a great and fun game. I spent countless hours playing this game, and it actually took me a while to find this game in very good shape, as this one is one of the ones that is harder to find, and it came in this cardboard box. So usually when you pick up this game, it's very hard to find it complete in good shape. So this one is great that they're adding it to the Sega Genesis Mini, as it is one of those more expensive games. And you also go ahead and fight off tons of different enemies. You have different weapons, punches, kicks, and it's just a great and fun action adventure game, and it really has a cool spin on it. And then next up we have this game that was announced on the Sega Genesis Mini list. This is Wonder Boy and Monster World, which you may have seen remade on the Nintendo Switch. So this is just a fun game, and this was great playing it on the Sega Genesis and Sega Master System growing up. So pretty much in this platform game, you have to go ahead and rid the world of these monsters, which are pure evil. And this game is very similar to The Legend of Zelda with its adventure, because you run around, collect hearts, collect money for armor and weapons and magic. So this is definitely a fun game, and it's really cool to see this one come back on the Sega Genesis Mini, as this game series was a great one, and it's definitely a lot of fun. And then of course, next up we have Golden Axe, which I predicted would be on this Sega Genesis Mini. Now, I spent countless hours playing this side-scrolling beat-em-up game growing up, and this one definitely has a different spin on your average beat-em-up game. So this one has some pretty sweet warriors on here, and some pretty cool-looking characters in this game, and they have these big axes and swords that you have to use while you run around. So it says, in Turtle Village, the children are fleeing for their lives. The invaders are brutal, ugly, and 12 feet tall, with huge arms and bellowing laughs. They love pounding you into the dirt. It's a spellbinding age of magic, fire-spewing dragons and skeletons in armor. Fight on the back of a giant turtle. Battle on the wings of an enchanted eagle. Vanquish and ride flame-breathing monsters to victory. As the warriors, swing a mighty sword and shatter your enemies with clouds of mushroom magic. As the Amazon, kick, smash, and blast your enemies with curtains of fire as the dwarfs strike the golden axe, somersault, and scorch the invaders with lightning. Find the prison of the king and princess, save them, and return peace to the world. So far, the score is Death Adder, thousands, you 0. It's time to change the score. So this will definitely be a fun game to include on this Sega Genesis Mini, and I'm really excited to play this game again as I haven't played it since I was younger. So this one definitely will bring back some memories, and this is a great game to try. And then of course, along with that beat 'em up style, we actually have Street Fighter, which of course would be announced on the Sega Genesis Mini. This one will be Street Fighter 2, the Special Champion Edition. Now you may be wondering, how are you supposed to play this game on a classic 3-button controller that they are releasing with the Sega Genesis Mini? Well, that's a good question, because they will actually be compatible with the Retrobit 6-button controller that you could go ahead and order, and they're pretty inexpensive, and they will work with the Sega Genesis Mini console, which is definitely perfect for this game, because without that controller this would be unbearable to play. So this is definitely a pretty sweet surprise with the Sega Genesis Mini. And then next up, they announced Vector Man for the Sega Genesis Mini. Now you guys may remember that game because it features a green Orbit, which is a robot on the front cover, and he's made up of these special orbs. And this game is a 2D action platformer, so this is definitely a pretty fun game as you pretty much run and gun, and it has some neat aspects to the game. So that one I haven't really played too much, so that one will definitely be pretty fun to go ahead and play it over on the Sega Genesis Mini, as I currently do not own that game. So that one looks like a fun game as well, and it's definitely different than a lot of the other style games that they mentioned for the Sega Genesis Mini. And then next up, they announced Alex the Kid and the Enchanted Castle. Now this one is the 5th game in the series of Alex the Kid games. So this one did very well on the Sega Genesis and the Sega Master System. So this was definitely a fun game for a lot of people. It definitely has a different spin on your modern day games and some of the other Sega Genesis games. So pretty much you have to run around as Alex the Kid, and you're hunting to find your dad Thor. This one is another side-scrolling platform game, and it's definitely a lot of fun, and it has some different takes with this whole rock, paper, scissors action in the game. And it's pretty neat that Alex the Kid can run around, kick, punch, crouch, and crawl, and he defeats his enemies, which essentially turn into these coins that he has to collect. So this one is definitely an interesting game. And then of course they announced Phantasy Star 4 for the Sega Genesis Mini. Now this one is the 4th one in the series. So Phantasy Star 4 is one of those RPG games that has turn-based combat, and it's definitely a great game in the series. It's one of the better games. So this one is definitely a pretty neat title to add on the Sega Genesis Mini, as this one has a great storyline, and it's definitely a lot of fun to play. And the game is more strategically challenging, so this game will be a great game to add for its different styles. So next up, they announced Ghouls and Ghosts for the Sega Genesis Mini. Now I played Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the Super Nintendo, and I even played Ghosts and Goblins. Now I've never beat any of those games growing up. They were always so difficult, so challenging, and you only get to make a couple mistakes before you die. So this game is definitely pretty hard, pretty challenging, and it can be a lot of fun, but it's mostly frustrating. So I'm excited to at least try this game over again, because last time I almost made it past the first level, and it took me several tries to get there. You have to be very precise in your movements, and you have to watch out for everything that comes your way. But the graphics on this game are so beautiful, the colors on here are great, and it really is a game that helped define my childhood, and it definitely is a great game for a lot of people to at least try. So hopefully you guys do a lot better than I have in the past, but this is definitely a great announcement as it continues to add some different game styles on here, and even some more challenging games on this Sega Genesis Mini. And then last, they shocked everyone with this game. So they announced Mega Man The Wily Wars for the Sega Genesis Mini. Now this game is such a great game, and it only got a release in the PAL regions and in Japan, so this is definitely a great game to add to the Sega Genesis Mini, as a lot of people haven't actually played it before. So it consists of some remakes of the first 3 games for the Mega Man series, and the Mega Man series is such a great series. It's a lot of fun. You have a lot of different colors and graphics in this game that make it spectacular, and it has some challenging aspects and a lot of fun aspects in this game. So this is definitely a great way to top off this Sega Genesis Mini reveal, and there are still 10 more games that have to be announced for the Sega Genesis Mini, so I am very excited to see what the last 10 games holds, and this is definitely great as they went ahead and surprised everyone with a option to add the 6-button controller for the Sega Genesis Mini, so you can go ahead and play the Street Fighter 2 game that was announced for this system. So I'm really looking forward to these other 10 games that have to be announced. So to go ahead and recap the 20 other games that have been announced so far, we have Space Harrier 2, Echo the Dolphin, Castlevania Bloodlines, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Shining Force, Toe Jam and Earl, Comics Zone, Sonic the Hedgehog, Altered Beast, Gunstar Heroes, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, World of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, Thunder Force 3, Super Fantasy Zone, Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master, Streets of Rage 2, Earthworm Jim, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Contra Hardcore, Landstalker, and then of course the Sega Mega Drive in Japan will have a different game list. So the 10 games that have been announced in Japan are Daimakomura, which is Ghosts and Goblins for the Sega Mega Drive in Japan, Street Fighter 2 Dash Plus, the Champion Edition, and then of course Rockman, which is like our Mega Man, they just call it something different in Japan. They'll still get Golden Axe, the Super Shinobi, Phantasy Star 4, Story of Thor, Puzzle in Action Tant R, Party Quiz Mega Q, and Yu Yu Hakusho. And I'll go ahead and post a picture of the previous 20 games that have been announced for the Sega Mega Drive that's only available in Japan. So with 10 more games announced for the Sega Genesis Mini that's due to release on September 19th, 2019, I can't be any more excited. I'm definitely looking forward to the last 10 games that will be announced, as 30 out of the 40 games have been announced and revealed for this Sega Genesis Mini console, and I'm going to go ahead and pre-order this system so that I have it on day one when it releases, as a lot of the games announced I actually don't have in my collection, and some of those games are very hard to find and they're pretty expensive, so it's great to go ahead and have this on this console, which makes it easily and readily available to play. You just hook it up to your modern day television and it comes with the controllers that you need, and you can go ahead and order a 6-button controller for the Sega Genesis Mini from a company called Retrobit that is licensed by Sega. So this is definitely a great option to add. So that definitely was a great surprise by Sega, and it'll definitely make things a lot easier to play. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and check out my other videos and stay tuned for more.